Hey, Mama. So, one question that often comes up from my clients and the women in my community is, how to be consistent in your business. Like, they want to know, how can I continue to show up in my business? And so I figured with us quickly approaching summer break and, us having the kids home, if you have school age kids and, usually summer's like vacation time, people are trying to go to the beach and different things like that. I figured this would be the perfect episode to drop right now. So we're going to be diving into how to be consistent in your business during the summer break, but this can actually apply to like any break, any holiday break, or different things like that. All right, let's jump into today's episode. Hey, Mama, are you tired of feeling stressed and overwhelmed trying to grow your online business with your babies at home? You desire more flexibility in your day, allowing you to pour into your family, yourself, and your business without running yourself into the ground. Mama, you can build your dream business and do it in a way that fits your current season of life. And I'm going to show you exactly how. Welcome to the Mama Turned Mompreneur podcast. I'm your host, Andria Singletary, daughter of the king, wife, mama of two, and life and business coach for mompreneurs. On this podcast, you will learn business strategies made for mamas just like you, who desire to be successful CEOs and fully present mamas without stress or overwhelm. So whether you're an entrepreneur who transitioned to a mompreneur or a mama turned mompreneur, I am here to support you. So grab your coffee, notebook, and pen, put in those earbuds, and let's dig in. All right, so if you have not already, make sure you click the link below or head on over to the show notes to grab your spot for the masterclass that I'm hosting. It's the Ditch the Algorithm and Get Visible Off Socials. So we are going to be diving into some of the different ways that you can get visible outside of social media, but really talking about those key components. So like, for instance, when it comes to podcast guesting, maybe you've tried it before and it didn't work for you. Well, I'm going to really walk you through how to actually leverage podcast guesting for your business, really developing a strategy for you, really looking at what your signature topics should be when you're pitching yourself to guest on podcasts, how to find the right podcast to guest on. So we'll be diving into that and other non-social media visibility strategies. So head down below to the episode description or over to the show notes to grab your spot for the free masterclass. Okay, so let's get into this episode. So, like I said, this is a question I have been asked several times from clients and the women in my community. And usually when they are referring to like consistency, how to be consistent in business, they're referring to how to be consistent in their marketing, because usually content creation and marketing their business is one of the things that falls off when they exceed their capacity. So the first thing I want to say is that you have to define consistency based on your current season of life. So really looking at like, what are your non-negotiables? So I can't remember what episode number it was, but like, I'll link it below in the show notes, but I talked all about like what my rules for marketing were, what my boundaries in marketing were. And so you have to kind of figure out, what is that for you? What are those things where it's like, no matter what is going on, this is going to happen in my marketing. This is going to happen in my business. And so figuring that out, but also looking at what can you simplify in your business and tying that into your marketing. What can you simplify in your marketing? What are you doing in your marketing that's complicated, that's doing too much, that isn't realistic based on your current capacity? So some of the things like you really have to stop doing is stop letting other business owners you admire define consistency for you. I get it. Your favorite coach, she's posting 5 to 7 times a week. She's posting on her feed. She's posting reels. She's showing up in stories, all these different things. But are you realistically looking at all that she has going on? For instance, does she have an entire team? Does she have someone managing her social media? Does she have someone, managing her podcast? All these different things. And so you can't necessarily look at what she's doing if you aren't in the same position she's in. The other thing is that you have to stop holding yourself to unrealistic expectations as a mom business owner. I talked all about this in another podcast episode that I will make sure to link in the show notes, but we can hold ourselves to these unrealistic expectations, and that messes us up so badly. Like, we have to be real about our current situation. We have to be real about the level of support we have with the kids. We have to be real about what we have going on in our personal lives, because yes, we're running a business, but we have personal lives too, and they overlap. If something is going wrong in our personal life, that's going to interfere with our business. It's going to interfere in how we show up. So you have to be realistic about that. And then back to the point about like simplifying your marketing, keep it to 2 to 3 marketing platforms. Like, make it easy on yourself. You don't have to be on every single platform in order to see results. Now, yes, you need to do more than one platform, but you don't need to be on 5, 10 different platforms if that doesn't make sense for you right now. And I always say choose at least one non-social media marketing platform. So as I shared about the masterclass, like, we're going to be diving into 3 of those non-social media marketing platforms and how to leverage them in your business during the masterclass. So podcast guesting, we're also going to be looking at speaking engagements in the form of virtual summits and conferences, and bundle collaborations. Those are all low energy, low effort, non-social media marketing strategies, platforms that you can be on that's going to allow you to still be consistent in your business without requiring more of your time, more of your energy, more of your capacity. So outside of, defining consistency based on your current season of life, some other things you want to do is, 1, plan ahead. So I've shared this on the podcast before, but like, when it comes to me planning my content, I usually, anywhere between the 15th and the 20th of the month, I'm planning out my content for the next month. So for instance, between May 15th and May 20th, I'm going to be planning out my June content. So I get ahead in, first, I plan out my podcast content. I do that first because that is where I start with when it comes to my content creation. Everything else is repurposed from my podcast content. So my emails, repurposed from my podcast content. Any social media content I decide to do, repurposed from my podcast content. So I start with planning out my podcast content. Once I've done that, I map out my emails. And then from there, I kind of map out my social media content. So either I focus on doing stories, or if I decide to I do now, like, I call them content dumps. So instead of like doing a new 9 grid all the time, I will like batch probably about like 3 carousel posts, and I'll just dump them in a week. Or I've been, like I said, I've been doing more reels lately, usually do about 1 reel a week. And so all of that is repurposed from my podcast episodes. So that is kind of like what I focus on and how I get ahead in planning my content. From there, like when it comes to my podcast episodes, I batch record. So I pick 2 Saturdays out of the month, and I record half of my episodes for the month on one Saturday and then the remainder on another Saturday. This allows me to get ahead. So I know that I will have a podcast episode going out every week because I already have it recorded. I don't have to scramble the week of and figure out, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? I have to go record this episode. No, I have it done already. It's just a matter of me editing and scheduling the episode to go out. So that's how I do it. But the other thing I make sure to do is I am clear on what my goals are and what offers I want to promote. So I actually, when it came to my offer calendar, I mapped that out so my 2024 offer calendar. So, like the offers that I want to promote, I mapped that out back in like December 2023. So, I went into the new year already knowing what offers I wanted to focus on. Now, yes, this did change a little bit where I like added in something and changed something here. But for the most part, I had a clear idea of like what offers I'm going to be promoting when. So each month I know what I'm focusing on. And so doing that ahead of time made it easier for planning my content each month because I know what the focus is. So I'm like, I have to create content that's going to funnel people to these specific offers. So that's really going to help you is thinking ahead and thinking big picture. When you do it that way, it makes it easier to show up, to be consistent in your business. So you really have to really be clear on what your goals are, what you're focusing on. So even thinking about for the summer, what are your goals for the summer? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you just trying to maintain where you're currently at? Are you looking to increase your income? Like really get clear on that and plan around that. And then you also have to decide on your frequency of posting. So, how often do you want to show up? So, for me, I've committed to 2 podcast episodes a week, and that is my main focus. I know that regardless of what happens, I'm going to have 2 podcast episodes that go out each week. So, you figure out what that is for you. Now, when it comes to social media, I may show up once a week. I may show up 5 days a week. You never know, but I don't rely heavily on social media. And so it's not a top priority for me. When I have the capacity and when I am feeling it, I will do it. And I've been trying to be more consistent in the sense of when I have new podcast episodes go out, I try to post then on socials to drive my social media community to my podcast. That's something I've really been trying to work on and be more consistent with. But anything extra I do, if I have the energy and capacity, if I'm inspired, I'll post it. But I don't get so caught up in the nuances of social media strategy and different things like that because that's not where I see my best conversions. I see my highest conversions from my podcasts and my emails. And so that is what I prioritize. And so that's what you have to figure out. What is working for you? I think that's the other thing here is that we show up on these platforms because we're told to, or we see it working for someone else, but we don't always really take the time to stop and reflect on, is it working for me? Am I seeing results from it? Because you should be prioritizing those things that are actually working in your business, that is actually yielding results for you. If it's not, it's a distraction. You need to push it to the side and prioritize those things that are working for you. And then as your capacity increases and say you do want to start to leverage another platform, when you have the capacity, you can really learn the ins and outs of it and how to effectively use it in your business. But top priority needs to be the things that are actually yielding results for you. Okay, the last piece of this in being consistent is, which I've already talked about it, but the content repurposing. So, as I shared, my content planning, it starts with my podcast. That is where I start. Everything trickles from the podcast. So, plan out the podcast content, which then I repurpose into email content, which I also repurpose for social media. I also, for my show notes, I kind of turn them into blogs. So instead of just like for the show notes, how I used to do, where it's like, these are the main topics, here's the episode description. I have that, but below that, I write a blog. So I take out the main points from the podcast episode and flesh them out in written form to really leverage SEO. But also, there are people who would rather read than listen to my podcast. So I have that. I also leverage Pinterest. So for every podcast episode, I create 2 pins, and basically a pin goes out the day the podcast episode goes live. And then the following week, that second pin will go out, and I schedule all of that. So that's essentially kind of like what I do for repurposing content. Now, I also utilize this when it comes to speaking engagements and guesting on podcasts. Essentially, the topics I pitch myself for are things that I already talk about on my podcast. So I don't reinvent the wheel. Like, I have my core areas, or my core, I guess you can kind of call them content pillars. Like, I have these main things that I talk about in my business. I really focus on growing your business off of social media. I also focus on building a business that fits your current season of life. Those are like my main areas of focus. And now, yes, there are things within those umbrellas that I can pull out and talk about more, like specifically podcasting for your business, podcast guesting for your business, different things like that. But that's kind of like what I focus on. And so when I pitch myself for speaking engagements and podcast guesting, I'm essentially just repurposing from content I already make. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think the biggest thing is simplifying and planning ahead. It shouldn't be that you're going week by week to plan content. When you plan it out ahead of time and you already know what you should be talking about, it makes the content creation process easier on you. It takes the stress off because you're not scrambling trying to figure out, what should I be talking about? What do I need to say? You already know because you have it planned out ahead of time. So I would say those are the biggest things when it comes to how to be consistent in your business. You just have to plan ahead. You have to be clear on your goals. Like, what offers are you specifically trying to fill? What is it that you're actually trying to do? Like, what are your business goals? When you plan that out ahead of time, it makes being consistent a lot easier. So simplify and plan ahead. Those will be your greatest assets in all of this. And then even to like batching, like we talk about it all the time, but any way that you can batch, like even when it comes to like, say you are, trying to be active on socials, create templates for your graphics. Have that already ready to go. Like if you're using something like Canva, have it already ready to go. So that way all you have to do is just go in and change out the text. Like make it easier on yourself. So that way you're not doing everything from scratch. You already have some things and systems in place that are already like, it cuts the content creation time down for you. So that is it for this episode. Again, I am hosting the Ditch the Algorithm and Get Visible Off Socials Masterclass. It's a free masterclass. So click the link below in the episode description or head on over to the show notes, grab your spot. We will be doing this thing on Tuesday, June 4th. And yeah, that is it for this episode. Well, Mama, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to hang with me. If you enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a favor and follow the podcast and leave a review? Hitting that follow button and sharing your thoughts about the podcast are the best ways to ensure that other mamas like you find this show. Your review also lets me know if you're enjoying this podcast, so make sure to share your thoughts before you go. All right, Mama, I'll catch you in the next episode.